All right. Looks like we got the live streaming up and we are recording. So if I could, let's see, I'm still missing one, I believe one committee member here. I don't see committee member Corey Ellis, and I was expecting her to attend. But I think I see everybody else that I was expecting.
Emma Lugo is also missing, apparently.
Yeah, I see Emma is here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So with it being 6:01, I will go ahead and ask the previous Urban Renewal Budget Committee Chair, Frank O'Donnell, to please open the meeting whenever you're ready.
Right now, sounds good to me. Today is May 17th. The hour is 6:03 p.m. I'm officially opening the Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting on this date. Ms. Riggs, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, I will. So I have committee member Sean Cross,
Here.
committee member Emma Lugo. Oh, I didn't hear you. Did you say here?
Here.
Okay, there you go. Rachel Lau Smith,
Here.
Timothy Christopher,
Here.
Adam Marl,
Here.
Doug Neely,
Here.
Frank O'Donnell,
Here.
Kyle Arnhart,
Here.
Denise McGriff,
Present.
Rocky Smith.
Here.
As I mentioned, absent is Corey Ellis. Also absent is Mike Mitchell and Casey Flesh. And then we did have a last minute resignation about 2 weeks ago that we did not have time to fill. And that was Chris Cook, unfortunately moved out of the area and needed to resign from the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. So with that, we have everyone here. If you want to continue, Chair O'Donnell.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs. According to what I have before me, the first order of business is elections, starting with the chairperson. Before we do that, I want to state that I am not a candidate for that position or any other. So having said that, I will open for nominations for the chairperson of the Urban Renewal Budget. Do I hear any nominations?
I nominate Mayor Lyle Smith as chair.
No. Do it.
Should I ask, in deference to her with her workload, I'm going to also ask, is there any other parties within these ranks that are interested in being nominated?
I nominate Denise.
I'm going to self-nominate.
Mr. Neely, you were about to say something?
I nominated her, but she also did.
Okay, well,
Second, both.
I will give either of those two individuals the opportunity to decline the nomination if they so wish.
I think they both nominated me.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mayor.
I was going to say, I thought they both nominated Denise. Commissioner McGriff.
No, one of them nominated you. You were the first nominee, and
Well, yeah, but then it,
Yeah, I appreciate that, Emma. I really do. After the last budget committee hearing meeting, I would love to let someone else do that.
okay.
I'm happy to support Commissioner McGriff.
You didn't have any fun?
So in that case, the
I
candidate,
withdraw my nomination.
in that case, the candidate for consideration is limited to Denise McGriff. We have the nomination and the second. Can we hear the vote?
Can we do all those in favor, please? Say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 All those opposed? And any abstentions? So I heard no opposed and no abstentions. So the motion
Okay.
passes. So the chair is now Denise McGriff. And if the previous chair, Frank O'Donnell, would like to turn the meeting over to the current chair, Denise McGriff, that would be great.
It seems only appropriate. I now turn the meeting over to newly elected Chair Denise McGriff. Thank you.
And thank you for the gavel. Yes, thank you so much. I would like to call for nominations for the vice chair of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. That would be if I am not able to attend or becoming incapacitated or anything of that sort. So we'll open the nominations.
I'll nominate Rocky Smith for vice president.
I second.
I'll say that.
Did you second that, Rachel?
Emma and I both did, so whoever
Okay.
Katie got down there is fine for me.
Yeah, you're a little bit fuzzy. You're
Yeah, my internet bad all day long, so I'll probably have to turn off my video.
Yeah. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Are there any other people just dying to be the vice chair of the budget committee besides Mr. Rocky Smith, committee chair?
If they died, they wouldn't be able to serve.
Pardon?
If they died, they wouldn't be able to serve.
Oh, that's true. All right, well, let's, not hearing any other nominations and nobody jumping in there. So let's take a roll call, not a roll call, but voice vote. So all those wanting to elect Rocky Smith as vice chair of the budget committee, please signify by saying aye or raise your.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we have the most prestigious position of all on the budget committee. That is the secretary. And are there any nominations for secretary of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee?
Can I nominate Emma?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any other distinguished candidates who would like to throw their name in the hat for secretary of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a voice vote, please. All those who are in favor of Ms. Lugo being the secretary of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Hi.
any abstentions or noes? All right, we have fulfilled our responsibilities under ORS 294.905. Next agenda, any questions?
Chair,
Yes.
you didn't ask for abstentions or
I did.
for,
Yeah, I said it.
not for vice chair, you didn't.
Well, it looked like everybody was in favor. Were you going to abstain?
Yes, I am gonna abstain.
Okay, Ms. Riggs, would you please change that unanimous vote to one abstention by
Thank you.
committee member and current vice chair, Mr. Rocky Smith, so that the record is accurately reflecting this.
Yes, I have it. Thank you, Chair.
Voting for himself. All right, so has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes of May 13th from 2019? I recognize that not all the committee members were present at that time, but you've had the opportunity to read them and go over them. And we will have, if there are no questions about the minutes, then we can take a vote. Any questions about the minutes from May 13th? All right, we will ask for a motion for approval of those minutes.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting minutes of May 13th, 2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And are there any Okay, all right, they are approved as submitted. So as we usually do at the Urban Renewal Budget Committee meetings, we have an opportunity for public comment. And as my understanding, we have one person who would like to address the Budget Committee with some comments and possibly questions. And is Mr. Buss on the call right now?
He is, and as you can see, he's got his video up and everything. So I think we're
All
ready
right.
to go.
All right. Why don't you go right ahead?
Thank you, Chair McGriff, committee members. My name is Jesse Buss. I live in Oregon City, but I'm appearing before you in my capacity as an attorney representing John Williams, former mayor of Oregon City, who is also a resident of Oregon City. As most of you know, Mr. Williams was the proponent of Measure 3514 back in 2016, and that measure was approved by the voters of Oregon City and has been embroiled in litigation ever since. I sent a letter to the city commissioners whose email addresses I have late this morning. I did not have email addresses for the rest of you committee members, but I know Ms. Riggs provided the letter to you at some point today, but I'm not confident that all of you will have had a chance to review it, so I'll go over the points quickly. That litigation, starting in 2016, is up at the Court of Appeals right now. The Circuit Court judge agreed with the Urban Renewal Commission that Measure 3514, which is now Section 59E of the Oregon City Charter, was preempted by state law. And Mr. Williams is challenging that at the Court of Appeals. If Mr. Williams ultimately prevails, there are some issues and some implications for the current budget cycle and everything you're discussing. Because what 59E of the charter says is you can't use tax increment financing for anything other than paying down existing debt. The problem is the proposed budget has about 6.3 million in additional TIF revenue coming in for the next 2 years. That's directly at odds with what the voters told the commission and the Urban Renewal Agency to do. They are irreconcilable. So the issue for both this committee and the Urban Renewal Agency is to decide what to do about that, because there's potential personal liability for decision makers that authorize the use of TIF funds in an inappropriate way. So a caution based on that. And that's the Oregon City Charter. There's this other issue, which is the Oregon Constitution, which is Article 9, Section 1C, says that tax increment financing shall be used to pay down indebtedness incurred for the redevelopment or urban renewal project. The problem here in Oregon City, we have no indebtedness currently. It was paid off last year. There's simply no lawful means, no lawful line item to spend TIF on right now. Instead, that 6.3 million would be going into essentially a savings account for at least the next couple of years. And that's not an appropriate use of TIF. I would encourage this committee to consider recommending the use of ORS 457-455, which allows a temporary pause on the use of collecting TIF, either for the next year or the next couple of years. I see my time is up. I'll remain available for any questions that you all may have, but I would refer you to the letter I sent out earlier today. And thank you for your time.
Whoops, thank you, Mr. Buss. Has everyone had an opportunity to receive the letter and also review the letter?
Have not.
Who said have not?
That's Doug.
You have not received it, or you have not reviewed?
I have not seen it. I looked at my email earlier this morning. I don't believe it was there.
Did you look at your city email or just your personal email? Because I only sent it to your city email address.
I didn't know I had one.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, okay, if you tell me, let me know so I can get that on. I was not aware I had the email address.
Okay.
All right.
I'll forward it to your
That's
personal
all I did
email
see.
right now.
So everybody else has received it?
Yeah, I've received it, but I haven't had a chance to look at
Okay,
it.
that was just the first part. So just want to make sure everybody got it. That's the critical thing. So everybody has gotten it. Doug will get his shortly. And I see committee member O'Donnell has his hand raised, and yes, sir.
Well, given the importance of the information in that letter and the fact that a number of our members have not received it, I recognize we have a 3-minute time limit, but if Mr. Buss needs additional time to elaborate upon what's in that letter, I would move that he be given additional time if he so desires. Thanks.
Second.
Was there a second?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to giving additional time if the other committee members are also okay with that. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Riggs, would you call the roll?
Oh, wait, there are people with,
Wait. You have comment?
I do, Miss Emma
Okay,
Lugo.
go right ahead. Sorry. Your hand just went up and then as I was talking. Go ahead.
All right, I'll go ahead and go. So I'm concerned about us continuing to discuss this when this is an active litigation case at the Court of Appeals, and particularly having an attorney who's representing a client in this case at the Court of Appeals. So I guess I would be interested in hearing from our attorney as to the appropriateness of this for public comment. I think it's fine, but I think we should be cautioned about having an open discussion about an open legal case. So I guess I would prefer to hear from our attorney before, and it's nothing personal against Mr. Buss. It's more clarifying his role and him providing public comment versus being an attorney in an active case.
Okay, Mr. Wiseman, before I call on you, let me get Ms. Lugo, who's got her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. So, I'm just a volunteer. I joined this committee kind of, because I want to get involved in the city and support the city. I have to say that I've served on a lot of boards, and I always find it very disturbing when somebody comes to me and tells me that if I vote for something or make a decision, there's personal liability. It sounds to me vaguely like a threat. And I don't know if you mean it that way or exactly what you mean by it. I just got your letter today. I had a chance to read it once, and I would just like to know what you meant by your statement that we have personal liability on this decision that we should be concerned about if we vote, because I'm just participating in a civic function. Thank you. And maybe our attorney could actually answer that.
Bill, do you feel comfortable with going ahead and responding to Ms. Lugo and Mayor Lyle Smith?
Sure, I do. And I guess there's two parts of it. One is the substance of what's in Mr. Buss's letter. And then there's also sort of the process, which is really what Commissioner Lyle Smith and Ms. Lugo were talking about a little bit in terms of discussing a currently active litigation. There are some ethical rules about an attorney contacting a represented party, and the Urban Renewal Commission is a represented party. The ethical rules are get a little fuzzy just because the Urban Renewal Commission is a public body, and there are limits. I don't want to go down too far down this path, but generally speaking, there is a opportunity to comment to the Urban Renewal Commission. There are steps that should be taken, but in short, there's nothing that prevents him from approaching you at this point. There's some steps that probably should have been gone through, but in any event, the question is not so much can he talk to you as much as what the extent of the discussion is. I will say that the substance is pretty well briefed and everybody knows what it is, and I can talk more about that if you want to, but in terms of having a discussion, I think we can do it, but I do think we should be aware of what's in litigation and what we can and can't talk about. In terms of personal liability and Ms. Lugo's comment, and this, I can't really get to it without talking about the substance. So what I believe Mr. Buss is talking about is ORS 294.100, which says it's unlawful for any public official to expend any monies in excess of the amounts provided by law or for any other or different purposes than provided by law, and provides for a civil liability if done so. What I can tell you is that the circuit court judge has told the city and the Urban Renewal Commission that 59E is preempted by state law and that it is not effective. As the law currently stands, 59E does not prevent the city from doing anything. That circuit court judgment has not been stayed. It is in effect right now. And so if this commission, if the Urban Renewal Commission were to expend monies consistent with the current circuit court judgment, I think it would be vanishingly unrealistic to think that there would be any personal liability as a result of that. If in fact the Court of Appeals were to overturn it, which is possible, I think it's unlikely, but it's possible, then there may be some requirements for the city to repay some of those funds from other funds. There might be some issues in terms of the city budgets, but in terms of personal liability, I think it's vanishingly unlikely that any member of this committee will be found personally liable for following the court's order.
Okay, Mr. Conkle, did you have anything to add to that? We do still have a motion and a second on the floor, so this is discussion.
I think Bill summarized it very well.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion about that?
I think Miss Lugo's hand went up again. I'm not sure.
Emma, did you raise your hand again? Oh, please go ahead.
I'm mostly, I mean, I'm satisfied with our attorney's response, but I'd still like to hear from the original presenter why he made that claim, because it's, to me, it's a little bit out of line for a budget commission to make a threat, to make what seems like a threat like that. And I'd like to hear his rationale for that.
Well, if we approve the motion, then we will have more time. So I'm going to go ahead and call for the question. So can we get, since I'd like to have this be a roll call vote, please.
Yes,
Can you
absolutely.
repeat the motion?
Yeah,
Yes, the
so
motion
I'm,
is to allow, is that, am I correct, Mr. O'Donnell, that the motion is to allow for some additional time? Another 3 minutes is, I think, is what you specified.
I didn't specify the time.
Oh,
but
okay, sorry.
I wanted to allow additional time if Mr. Buss so needs it, because I think being that everyone has not seen that letter, a summary of what he has presented would be helpful to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, is that pretty clear? Ms. Riggs?
okay, I'm gonna do the roll call vote, starting with Sean Cross,
No.
Emma Lugo,
Yes.
Rachel Lyle Smith,
No.
Timothy Christopher,
Yes.
Adam Marl,
Yes.
Doug Neely,
No.
Frank O'Donnell,
Yes.
Kyle Arnhart,
No.
Rocky Smith,
Yes.
and Chair McGriff.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6-4, yes.
That was 6 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4 noes. So that passes.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Although, sorry,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
feel like I'm echoing or being really loud.
Nope.
Budget committee law or urban renewal budget committee law, Matt, would this apply where it has to be 8 approve? Because for budget committee law, any motion that we have on the floor has to have a majority of the total number of committee members in favor of it. So that would mean 8 committee members would have had to have voted for the item for it to pass. And that's any item that's on this agenda. Is that correct, Bill or Matt? I don't know the answer to that, so I'm looking for you for help.
I'm going to defer to Matt, but I typically have not been involved in budgets, and so I would have to dig into the budget law a little bit further to see where that came from and whether that applies to a procedural matter like this.
Katie, may I ask a question? Chair, may I have a
Could,
question?
could we let Mr. Zook answer the question before?
Okay, yeah.
Please.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Katie, you're correct. And I forwarded to you. I'm trying to pull it up on the screen here, but
Okay.
ORS does require that any motion in a budget committee process does require a majority of the members of the committee, not those present. So in this case, by virtue of us having 10, it doesn't really matter how many people are at the committee meeting. We have 14 members, and so it takes eight affirmative votes to pass a motion in this case.
Okay. So if that's the answer, then the motion does not
I've never heard of
pass.
that rule as long as I've been on budget committees.
It's OAR 150-294.336B.
As Bill said, this is basically a procedural question. It is involving whether we're going to give somebody additional time from our normal 3 minutes. It's not a vote on any money or anything of that sort.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What was the vote in favor, Katie?
6-4.
It was 6-4. 6 in favor, 4 against.
Am I able to change my vote to a yes? I know that doesn't make the 8.
You can change your vote.
Okay, I'll vote yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
I take issue with a process that you count all members, whether they're present or not. And I mean, it's an immediate no vote or assumed no vote by virtue of the fact that you're not present. This is a very thing that bogged down our own state legislature with people walking out instead of casting a vote. So honestly, my only interest is that this committee is well informed. I'm not trying to give Mr. Buss an opportunity to present a position, just to provide information. And I'm sorry that people feel a no vote's in order.
Mr. Smith?
The committee could be equally informed by taking a 5-minute break and reading the letter.
That's a good solution.
Did you find it, Doug?
I don't even know if I need the password to get to it, so.
Doug, I sent it to your personal email.
Oh, okay, very good.
I literally just sent it.
Yeah, go ahead and do it then.
Bill? I guess I'm feeling very frustrated at the moment, and the fact that, again, we're not dealing with a substantive issue involving it's information only. And I understand we have the ORS, and I'm not proposing to be a lawbreaker, but to me, this seems like it's outside of the scope of what that's supposed to be.
As I mentioned earlier, I have not typically been involved in budget law and don't claim specific knowledge. I do know that in the local budgeting manual, it says any budget committee action requires the affirmative vote of a majority of the total budget committee membership, OAR 150-294-336B. And to the extent the motion was for the committee to take action, it seems as if it applies here. And I think the idea is that when you're dealing with budgets, you want to make sure that it's, you've got a majority of everybody, and there's not a smaller group that can, take control in certain circumstances. And for good or ill.
Well, then I would propose we take a 5-minute recess for people to read the letter and come back with their questions, and Mr. Buss can stay on the committee call and answer some questions.
I'm in the process of reading it.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. So Ms. Riggs, we're coming back at 6:35 or 6:36.
Yes, 6:35.
Okay. Doug, you might want to turn your camera off while you're on break. All right, we're almost back. Tim, are you in your car?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at my son's track practice and my phone's got maybe 25 minutes of juice left. So, I've been putting myself on silent and keeping my car running so my phone will keep working.
I've done that. I've done that many times.
I'm on dad mode right now.
Dad mode. Okay, good. Well, let us know how the game's going.
I will.
Is everyone back? All right. Yes, Mr. O'Donnell.
When Mr. Zook run that rule by me again, I want to see what percentage we need or how many votes we need.
8.
Well, he's saying that the committee is 14. We need 8 out of 14.
Here's
that-
the language of the rule. It's actually at OAR 150-294-04. The action requires
We're losing you, Bill.
of a majority of the total Oh, sorry. Let me try this. To take requires the affirmative vote of a majority of the total budget committee membership. Majority is defined as one more than half unless otherwise specified by law.
Well, let me ask this. We are not a committee of 14. We have a resignation. We are a committee of 13. You kind of count resignations, and I don't care if you count absenteeism, but if you count 7 out of 13, you're 50% plus 3. You're 53%, 54%.
One more than half. So,
Well, 7 out of 13 is one more than half.
if there are 13 members of the committee, then yeah, there is one more than half.
Well, we had 14 with one resignation. We now stand at 13. We have 7 in the affirmative.
Well, sounds to me like we have the number.
I feel we do.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Buss, please proceed. Oh, did you have a question, Ms. Rocky? Go ahead.
Not really a question. I guess I don't really understand what the discussion or conversation is about if the real reason for it was to find out more about the letter and whether or not people have read it. I'm inclined to change my vote to a no now. We received a letter that has all the information, and we took a 5-minute break to read it. I don't know what else there is to know.
There are some people that have questions that they would like to ask, which I think we should allow for the opportunity to do so.
At risk going into territory that our attorney kind of told us we should be careful about.
Well, I think we're going to be very careful.
We will see.
Well, he's now changed the vote to, so it's
He
6.
didn't say he was going to. He said he might.
I just want more explanation of where we're going with this. I don't really understand. We've been through enough budget meetings the last month to see this going in the same direction as other ones. I'm not ready for it necessarily.
I respectfully disagree. We're not going in the same direction. We're just asking for further clarification. And I would like to just go ahead and move forward with there are people who have questions, and Bill will give me the whatever hand signal or whatever if he's going to cut somebody off if it starts getting into territory.
Okay.
Anybody else got their hand up? I'm looking for, it's funny, you were in the left-hand corner, now you switched over to the right-hand corner when you took your hand down. It's like, woo. Okay, please proceed cautiously and judiciously, Mr. Buss.
All right, thank you, Chair McGriff. I want to apologize to all the committee members for inadvertently creating a procedural morass there. I think some of the lack of clarity on what I was trying to say is it was created by virtue of the 3 minutes I was trying to pack a lot into. So I'll start out first with answering Board Member Lugo's question. I did not mean to make a threat, veiled or otherwise. My client, Mr. Williams, has no intention of coming personally after any member of this committee, which I think would be impossible, nor any member of the actual Urban Renewal Agency. Though I will say neither Mr. Kbeisman nor I can give any of you individually advice about potential personal liability. That is not what I was intending to say. I was simply raising the issue that it's potentially a problem if the budget actually gets adopted and money spent a certain way. It won't be my client coming after anyone individually, but some third party who none of us are aware of might. That's all. And as you notice, I didn't even put that in the letter. It doesn't rise to the level of being worth putting in the letter. But I don't want to talk about the lawsuit. It was never my intent to talk about the substance of the pending lawsuit, just to raise the fact that it's there and its outcome does have substantial bearing on the future of this budget and what can be done with this budget. But separate from the lawsuit is this issue of the Oregon Constitution, Article 9, Section 1C, which has nothing to do at all whatsoever with the pending litigation. That provision of the Constitution is not at issue in the lawsuit. That provision says you can only use TIF to pay down existing debt. It's very similar to a provision of the Oregon City Charter. And the point that my client wants to make is simply that, hey, this budget is calling for $6.3 million of TIF to be diverted for the next 2 years, which would otherwise go to public services other than urban renewal, and get used for public services in those next 2 years. Under this budget, it would go and sit in a pot for some future hypothetical use someday, which is unlawful. So I intend, and my client intends, to present to the Urban Renewal Commission as well when they actually do consider the budget. But his proposal is that this committee should recommend to the Urban Renewal Agency, hey, let's take a break from collecting more TIF revenue for the next year or two, and see where we are in a year or two, whether there are new urban renewal projects that pop up. Maybe the litigation that is pending will be resolved in that time. But the basic point is there are no projects currently on the table, and there's no debt that needs to be paid down. So there should not be any more TIF diverted. That's really the basic point I wanted to make, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify.
Are we still okay?
We do. I think I'd see Commissioner Neely is raising his hand.
Yeah, that's just gonna say, we're fine, so I'm gonna move on.
I do want to address some.
People have questions. Mr. Neely?
Well, I was just clarification to what he's stating, that we could only use it for paying down debt. Is that true? Over the next
The Oregon
biennium?
Constitution says that the essentially the TIF, I won't get into the specifics, shall be used to pay indebtedness incurred for the redevelopment or urban renewal project. That does not prevent the city from accumulating savings and using it to pay debt that is incurred in the future. There's nothing that requires you to immediately, money in one pocket must flow immediately into a debt. As long as it's used to pay down debt, it is consistent with the Oregon Constitution. So the idea that it's illegal to put it into a savings account, I think, is incorrect.
Ms. Lugo?
So I'm just wondering where committee members stand on this issue who have a historical familiarity with the urban renewal budget. Specifically, I would love it if anyone would feel comfortable responding to his statements, that it might potentially in the future be illegal. I think that he makes some really valid claims. I've been kind of curious about the urban renewal budget myself. And I would like to hear from some of my senior committee members who have familiarity with this.
Okay, well, before I open it up, do we have any other questions for Mr. Buss so that we can close that part of the public comment section? Any other questions for him? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Buss, thank you so much for your information and your patience. And we will, I'm assuming we will be talking to you in the future.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, committee members.
Mr. Conkle? Oh, excuse me, before I get to you, Mr. Conkle, Mr. Smith has his hand up. I don't want to, you've moved back over to the left-hand corner now.
Okay. So in responding to Member Lugo's question, read the minutes from last year's urban renewal meeting, where I had huge concerns about it. So much so that I was the sole vote against the urban renewal budget last year, and also voted against the city budget as a whole because it included urban renewal. So that's where I stand on it.
Anybody else interested in trying to answer her question?
Well, I'm not interested in answering your question. I just want some more clarifications from our attorney.
Okay, but we're still on her question. So I'll get to you in a second. Mr. O'Donnell.
Well, my perception as one who has served a long time on this committee is I view the information presented in the letter by Mr. Buss as informational in nature. I didn't view it as a threat. making people aware of things probably would have served our school board well if they had been advised ahead of time. So I don't feel threatened in any way. I think the nature of the letter is informational. I don't see it as trying to make a case or try the case. It's already in a court of law. So I'm comfortable with the information presented, taking it as information only. Thanks.
Thank you.
Joel, did you want to say anything?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Okay. This has been an interesting one. We've tackled it. We've tried to tackle it this year with our contract with Leland to try to make amends to the issue that's before us tonight. I mean, when Commissioner Smith and I campaigned a couple of years ago, we were faced with this issue of the vote of the people who essentially voted against urban renewal. And the question that always came before us was whether or not we would respect the vote of the people. There's been lots of discussion about the complicated nature of urban renewal and whether or not people fully understood what they meant. And at the same time, the issue was taken to local circuit court where, it found that the vote of the people was essentially unlawful. And technically we don't have to consider that vote. And it is currently in the Court of Appeals, but what is currently allowed at this point in time is an active urban renewal commission, an active urban renewal budget. I think our work with the Leland Consulting Group was a way to dive a little deeper into the community and get feedback so that we felt comfortable as a committee moving forward, even though that we knew that the majority of folks voted essentially against urban renewal a couple of years ago. I will say it's a super complicated topic. It's hard for me to imagine that most people can understand all of the ins and outs of urban renewal and TIF and all of that just by reading a blurb in the voters pamphlet. And I'm not saying that they got it wrong. I think there were some projects that went awry at the same time that weren't that great. And so, maybe a restructuring of urban renewal and the direction we're headed, that I think this commission is headed moving forward, I think is in a really good one. We are wanting to, revise, restructure, do it better, and I think that's a great path forward. So legally, I think we're standing on our own 2 feet. We're in legal compliance. We rely on our attorney and to give it, and therefore that's no different than any other thing that comes before the commission where we rely on our attorney to give us advice and move forward. So that's where I'm at, and I rely on our attorney advice and recognizing that it is in the Court of Appeals and it could potentially be overturned. And like Mr. Kabizman said, there could be some financial implications for that. But it has already been successful for the Urban Renewal Agency at the local circuit court. So I feel like where we're at has legal standing, and we're not doing anything that is breaking the law.
Sean, did you have anything you wanted to say? I'm calling on the quote unquote senior members of the group, not in age, just in our tenure. Are you shaking your head? No, you don't. Sean.
Sorry, I'm having all kinds of computer problems. No, I'm senior. I've only been here a year.
Still senior than some of the other people.
No, I agree with Rachel. Everything she said.
Okay. Let's see. Kyle is new and Tim is new. So I guess, yes, Doug, is it related to this topic or are you going on to another topic?
Well, I think it's all related.
Because I want to close this part of the conversation out if you're not adding to that. Go ahead.
Well, it comes back to what Rachel was talking about and what the attorney has indicated here. Whether at one point, in fact, a decision is made that reverses the opinion at the appeals court, My concern would be if we in fact expended the funds over the next biennium, whether in fact a ruling might be that the city would have to reimburse the Urban Renewal Agency. That's my only concern, but I think it's an important one.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. I will sum it up by saying that I agree with Mr. O'Donnell and Ms. Rachel L. and Mayor Rachel L. Smith. I feel that the direction that we've taken has been cautious but prudent. I feel that we have investigated further options for the Urban Renewal District, and I've said for the record many times that I am very supportive of urban renewal as a tool. I've also said that I believe very strongly that we need to revise what we are doing. And at my discussions with Economic Development Manager Graham, I have just this weekend finished reading the entire Urban Renewal Plan with red markups, which I will give to him as some ways that we can probably make it a little better. You know, it's only my suggestion. The one thing that I would say about our Urban Renewal District that I am not familiar with is that many of you know that I did work for an urban renewal agency. We never directly used TIF. We borrowed against that money and used that for our projects, and we used the proceeds from whatever we were doing to pay back the debt, and that's how we paid down the debt. We never took urban renewal money directly. So the way we do it here, again, is a little contrary to the two agencies that I've worked for in the past, that they don't directly use the TIF. They borrow against it and bond for it. So again, the way we do this is quite a bit different. And that's something I've kind of broached the topic of to Mr. Graham, saying, is there a better way that we can do this? The other thing I have Mr. Kavaisman is that I'm almost done. I see your hand. Just saying, I'm just trying to finish. I took a pause, and so that was there. So I guess the question I would have, depending on the outcome of the litigation, and I want the voters to know that I don't take their vote lightly, but I totally agree with Mayor Rachel L. Smith that it is a complicated topic. I've been studying it for 20 years, and I can't tell you that I totally understand it 100%. I probably at about 60. But so we added the charter amendment in our charter once this passed. For whatever reason, let's say that the Court of Appeals upholds our opinion, would we then take that section out of the charter? It doesn't stay there forever, does it?
I think historically we've left it in there, but we've put rescinded by either voters or the court.
Like you do in a law book, when some law has been superseded, you put a footnote and say this is, okay. That's kind of what I thought. So Mr. Neely, sir.
The intention of my comment was actually to get information from the attorneys. Would the city, should the original decision be overturned in the appeals court, would the city be responsible for any indebtedness that we take on from this point out, or any payments we would make from this point out?
It's a good question, and it's difficult to answer in the abstract without knowing the actual decision of the Court of Appeals and how they came down on it. It is conceivable that the Urban Renewal Commission would have to repay money that was spent contrary to Section 59E if the Court of Appeals were to find it, that it should have gone into effect. I think it unlikely that the city would have to pay the urban renewal, pay back whatever expenses they had based on the urban renewal agency acting contrary to it. It's, because the city and the urban renewal agency are separate entities. The question is really, what does it mean if the urban renewal agency expends money consistent with the law as it stands now? The Court of Appeals comes back in 6 months and says, actually, the circuit court got it wrong and 59E should be in place. I don't know, and like I said, it depends on what's going on. I suspect the answer would be urban renewal agency stop spending money contrary to 59E, but I think it's unlikely that they would say, and you must go back and recapture, but it's possible. And it may depend on what the reasoning and how it all plays out. But number one, the city, I don't believe would have liability. Number two, to the extent there is any, it's only for that short period between when the city expended money contrary to 59E and when the Court of Appeals said don't do it. And for the most part, the Urban Renewal Agency hasn't been spending that much money because of, we've been accumulating it into savings in part because of the court case.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are kind of at a little bit of a conundrum, and we still have some items on our agenda to discuss and to look at, and there are no more questions. I'd like to ask Mr. Conkle and Mr. Zook about the budget message.
So there are two hands raised.
Okay,
and
two more hands. I looked
did
down for
ask-
2 seconds and there were more hands.
Okay, and Mr. Gebeisman does need to get off. So if this does need to continue with the legal, we're going to have to come back with your questions answered.
Yeah, I don't have any more, but Emma?
So just to clarify, it sounds like according to our attorney, you're saying that if the court does reverse the opinion, actually this is a question for Matt, but the attorney I think answered it already. If the court does reverse the opinion, will we have adequate funds saved within our city budget to repay, assuming that was, the ruling? It sounds like you're saying we do.
I don't think that's what he said. I think he said that in the likelihood, we haven't spent any money. So it would depend on when the ruling came down as to whether we'd have to repay anything. And since we haven't spent anything, there's no repayment. And didn't you say most cases wouldn't say you had to repay something?
Yeah, and it's hard, again, it's hard to tell without knowing what the opinion is. But as I understand it, the Urban Renewal Agency hasn't taken on any significant projects, so there's not a huge amount of expenditures at risk. There are continued expenditures for administration and just sort of keeping the lights on, more or less, as I understand it. And Tony and Matt can tell me if I'm wrong on that. So there is, that continued expenditure. To the extent, the court says,
from my memory, that's about $700,000 per biennium.
And
is that correct?
No, we haven't spent that amount of money. Matt, can you respond to that? We haven't spent 700. You're talking about the money we're taking in. Are you getting the money we're taking in mixed up with the money that we're spending?
I'm sorry. When I reviewed the urban renewal budget, I saw a figure of about $672,000 for administrative over a 2-year period. Is that not accurate?
Sounds right to me,
right.
Emma.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So those are the only costs that we would incur that the state would need to repay. Is that correct?
Right. That's what.
Right. Thank you.
that would be the most, and I'm trying to remember when, but I don't know if all that's been paid with TIF or not, or whether there are other funds that come in that pay for some of it. But again, that's only if the court says, we agree with Mr. Williams and you have to repay. There's also a significant chance they could say, we would agree with Mr. Williams, but these expenditures that you've done were all consistent with the law, so there's no obligation to repay. We just don't know.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Well, knowing that this is a budget discussion, and I'm aware we have an administrative expense, and then there's a question of what constitutes debt, but I don't think we need to go into an in-depth analysis on how we're going to spend money. I mean, if the liability is $672,000 at most, and even that's questionable, because there is a section that says about that in the absence of its own administration, the Urban Renewal, can have another agency do their administration, and the question is, do you consider that a debt or not? So I don't want to get all caught up in that, but I think what this committee is going to have to answer tonight is, in the absence of a project, we had this discussion. Do we want to potentially reduce the rate at which we collect TIF? Do you want to go zero, half, continue to collect it in full? Or, I know we talked about changing the base being a more permanent situation. So the reduction in TIF collection percentage would be a different matter. So I think we need to focus on this as a budgetary discussion. We're not talking about expending large pieces of money. I think we should move along with the budget and see where we stand. If there's any expenditures within the budget that causes concern as a committee, let's talk about those. Thanks.
I'm gonna.
Thank you. I'm gonna dismiss Bill here.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got
please-
to move
yeah.
on to something else. I think Commissioner O'Donnell's hit the nail on the head. I think my role is here, giving you some parameters about, we've got this letter that came in and said there may be a big problem. And what I want to convey to you is there are some issues that, uncertainty is still out there, but you're working within the parameters of what you have. And the policy call that Commissioner O'Donnell identified is the one that this committee should focus on. And with that, if there are additional questions, I can check in. Tony can track me down tomorrow.
No, I was going to suggest the same thing. Mr. O'Donnell, you must be reading my notes that I have here on my paper, because I was basically going to say essentially the same thing, that we have a lot of what ifs, and I don't think we're in a position to solve them this evening, but we do have some other items that we need to discuss, and I'd like to ask the city manager to focus our attention on the task at hand.
Thank you and good evening. So I'll give the budget overview. So the Oregon City Urban Renewal Agency's 2021 through 2023 proposed biennial budget is balanced and has been prepared in accordance with Oregon budget law. For the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2023, the total budget is $9,701,811. The agency is a separate legal entity with the City of Oregon, from the City of Oregon City, that is established under state law. Oregon Revised Statute Chapter 457.0351 creates a public body, corporate, and politic to be known as the Urban Renewal Agency for each municipality. On November 8, 2016, voters passed Measure 3-514, which is intended to limit the use of urban renewal in Oregon City. On July 18, 2017, the Circuit Court determined that the measure is preempted by Oregon Revised Statutes Chapter 457. The court found that the measure is inconsistent with state law and the agency's expenditures are not restricted. This decision was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and we are awaiting that decision. At a meeting of the Urban Renewal Commission on August 19, 2020, the commission decided to retire all outstanding bonded indebtedness of the agency as soon as practicable. As of December 1st, 2020, the Urban Renewal Agency has retired all its outstanding bonded indebtedness. The budget does not include funding for any new urban renewal projects. The commission has clearly stated their intent to comprehensively review the value of urban renewal as a tool to eliminate blight and enhance the downtown area. It is very important to the commission to engage residents to determine acceptable uses for the agency. The proposed budget is funded by total biennium revenues of $6.6 million, 95% of which are from property taxes. Revenues increased by $482,500 or 8% over the previous budget. Tax increment increases are budgeted at 4.5% for each year of the biennium. Other revenue sources include income from property rentals and investment income. Projected spending for the biennium totals $792,000 and is comprised of minimum operating and legal costs. The budget includes costs to operate agency-owned rental properties. A reserve fund for future expenditures of $8.9 million is available for appropriations to projects pending the Urban Renewal Commission's review. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Zook, do you have anything you would like to add before I open it up to any questions?
No, thank you, Chairman Griff.
Are there any questions before we move on with the discussion at hand? I don't see any yellow hands or regular hands or any hands. So Tony, why don't you and Matt take us through the anything else you need to know about we need to know about the budget? That was on page 2 of the budget message, proposed biennial budget, July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2023.
Thank you. We've, on the resources side, we've line itemed out the beginning fund balance, the property taxes that we estimate, the rental incomes that we've estimated, the interest income and the other income. On the requirement side, agency administration includes minimum staff time and contracts to operate the agency, policy meetings, contract management, investments, debt service, financial audits, impact reports. The legal and consultant services are costs to administer the future projects and support the commission. The rental expenses are costs to manage and maintain the properties, including the Amtrak station, Clackamas landscaping, and the 2 homes that are currently owned. The operating materials and services are costs for transcription and audit services. All outstanding indebtedness was retired in the current biennium. There are no anticipated principal and interest costs in the next biennium.
I actually have a question for you under the rental expenses. So that would include any of our properties that, because you talked about maintaining the train station or things of that sort. So our 10th and Main property where we every so often have to go out and cut the grass, that is a part of that?
No, we have not been maintaining that through the urban renewal.
That's just us doing it as the city?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And that would include like our 12th and Main lot as well? Because I mean, I think there's only weeds on it, but it hasn't been overgrown the same way the other piece of property.
Correct.
Yes. Do we have any questions or comments? Oh, this is a very unchatty group tonight. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I'll ask a question then.
Please.
It's sort of based on the previous discussion, but income that we derive from property the Urban Renewal Agency owns, that's not really affected by what has been discussed previously in terms of we own those properties, therefore we derive income from them. And that is not an issue in terms of how we might want to use that revenue. Is that true?
That is correct. And I know, and Denise, Commissioner McGriff, I'll need to go back and check. I know that we did have a landscaping contract that helped with like Amtrak, and the 10th and Main may have been in that one.
Yeah, I was just, if it was included I'm totally fine with it. I just thought, well, that's probably what also is included in that, because that is a rental expense.
Yep. And so, yes, Member Neely, that is correct, that income that is derived from the rental properties is not encumbered under 59E, since it's not tax increment that's created.
Thank you.
Emma, you have a question?
Yeah, so I know that it sounds like the urban renewal is kind of a non-issue, mostly for the Budget Commission. We're mostly going to treat it as a form of inaction. But I'm just curious, as someone who's a little bit of an outsider, just to ask City Commission and fellow commissioners, if you were to do something with urban renewal, what would you like to do with it? I mean, if in your dreams you could do something with that money that we've collected for some purpose having to do with dealing with urban blight, what would you like to spend it on? I mean, I know we're not going to do that tonight, but I would just love to hear out of pure curiosity.
Can I request that we hold on that
That's fine.
question and the answer to that? Because yes, I mean, I could talk your head off for 2 or 3 hours if you'd like, but I won't bore the other members with that. But I would like to get back. I'm going to put it what we call in the parking lot, but we're coming back to it. Commissioner O'Donnell.
on the budget itself, on the income side of the equation, the income side of the statement. We previously had a discussion which we never concluded, and I think it's pertinent to tonight. In the absence of a project in the next 12 months, we talked about, did we want to either change the frozen base or make an alteration to the percentage of TIF we collect? And I think that goes to the budget itself, because that is the income side of the equation. So I think that discussion should happen at some point tonight.
I would say I partially agree with you. What my concern is that I don't believe the other members of the budget committee have had an opportunity, nor have they read the Leland report. And we have that coming up at our meeting later on this week for that discussion to occur. And although I do agree that it does pertain to budget to a certain point, I think it's might be a little unfair to ask people who haven't really been versed in that as we have. Mr. Cross.
Where are we on the agenda? Are we on item 5 or item 6? Are we getting the officer message, or are we discussing it yet? Oh, okay.
Item 6.
Okay, thank you.
He's already given the budget message. Mr. Zook didn't have anything to add. We're having discussion about the budget itself, the particular income and resources, total requirements that are proposed on this. And Mr. O'Donnell is suggesting that we have some additional discussion with regard to the information that grabbed my agenda packet for the next meeting. We have that on our agenda for, it's called Study of Urban Renewal Next Steps for our meeting on the 19th. Yes, Sean.
Okay, yeah, okay, now we're right. I was hoping we weren't. So no, I would suggest that we adopt the budget the way it is. By having funds in the bank, you can do a project right away. It's like trying to go buy a house with no money down. It's going to take a long time to actually get the funds if we don't actually collect the funds up front. So you really need some capital there to actually get projects going. It's not that the Urban Renewal District doesn't have a list of projects in its plan. There's a long list of projects that we can do. It's just that we're going through the project, the whole thing with Leland on, are we going to have an urban renewal district or not? If we decide to have one, it'll be nice to have a lot of capital there to actually start working on projects to actually bring the AV up. You know, if we do projects that a lot quicker, like I said, than not having any capital there at all. Again, it's very similar to like trying to buy a house with no money down, unless you're like a veteran and you have, you know, you don't need any because you have a VA loan or something like that. But I don't think the urban renewal does that. And having $3 million a year in annual revenue is actually quite nice, that you can actually get more debt. So you can spend that money to get the projects going. You can then issue more debt, and you'll actually be able to close the district down more quickly, because you'll be able to actually do a lot more projects that will bring the AV value up, which then will bring in more TIF to the district. So I would not support not having the revenue in this.
Good.
Yeah, to come to Frank's point, my suggestion is simply this. I don't think we can make those decisions that you were talking about tonight. If we need to do so, we can always call for another budget meeting.
I'm just gonna call on people, see if there's any other concerns. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's just a lot of kind of outstanding things right now. Not quite knowing exactly, you know, that there's a pending lawsuit, I doubt whether we'll have to pay it back, but you know, if we do have to pay something back, coupled with the fact that there was a vote that said they didn't want it, like how is that best serving the city? I mean, I'm a fan of urban renewal. I think it's important, but there's just a lot of, I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts right now, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with a lot of them, if that makes sense.
Kyle?
I don't have any questions. I heard Sean and understand what he said and support that, and I'm in favor of moving forward.
Emma? Any thoughts?
Sorry.
I'm being a little less formal here. So Emma, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, no, I've already said what I needed to say. Thank you.
Okay. Adam?
Thank you, Chair McGriff. I would echo what Mr. Christopher said. I feel a little uncomfortable and would prefer the ability to read up on the issues that Commissioner O'Donnell has talked about. And there's obviously just a lot of moving parts. So I would not be opposed to further discussions in the future.
Okay. Marilyn Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner McGriff. I think the challenge that we're facing is that we have budget committee members who received a letter regarding litigation, which had some really hefty statements and considerations in them. And at the same time, the Urban Renewal Commission as a whole has been spending the last year, actually, we started this last March in 2020 with the whole purpose of responding to the vote that happened in 2016 regarding urban renewal. That was the whole reason that we've spent this last year hiring Leland. The only thing that I can say for the budget committee members is that I guess as a Urban Renewal Commission member, we are essentially asking the other representatives who are not Urban Renewal Committee members to kind of extend a level of trust, knowing that we haven't fully resolved what we're going to do. So in upcoming meetings, I think we're on the verge of deciding, and it's always been on the table of potentially shutting down the urban renewal. So just know that it was an option on the table, and we've listened to opponents from urban renewal. We've talked about, what's coming forward is talking about how we can revise the structure if we decide to continue moving it forward. We've had discussions about what would happen about shutting it down. We've had discussions about potential projects and getting moving on urban renewal. So we've had a lot of conversations in the last year trying to deal with this uncertainty and the fact that we had a vote where the community expressed some concerns and didn't want to move forward with urban renewal. And that left us with this, well, what do we do with that? And so I mean, truthfully, I feel like us spending a year on it may have been frustrating to others and maybe feel like it didn't get, maybe wasn't beneficial. I'm hoping that the flip side of that happens and that folks will see that we took the time and we tried to do the due diligence to really explore urban renewal and its use in Oregon City. So this budget committee is essentially going to be asked to extend a level of trust to the committee members to say, you're going to make a decision, because we are going to make a decision in the next couple of months about what to do with urban renewal. We don't have that answer right now, but we're being forced as a budget committee to make a decision on that without knowing, 2 months from now, what the Urban Renewal Committee is going to decide to do with urban renewal as a whole. And how do we, if it continues, how do we structure it? How do we improve it? Or if we close it down, what does that look like? So I guess I just kind of wanted to maybe explain that a little bit and explain kind of the due diligence and where it kind of seems like we're at. And I know it is kind of asking a lot from the budget committee. There is a lot of unknowns, and we've all been dealing with those for the last year. So I totally get it. And I would support if the committee in general feels like you need more time, you need to talk to folks, or we want to talk about some of this some more, then I would totally support that versus voting tonight. But for those of us who've been working on this for a year, I think it's easier for us to feel confident about where we're at and moving forward. So I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. O'Donnell, did you have anything you wanted to add? Before I call on Commissioner Smith?
I suppose what I would say is even though I voted against hiring a consultant, the reason that we did that was not in response only to the community. From my perspective as a former chair of this, the urban renewal rules are so complex that I felt very few people understood them, including many members of our Urban Renewal Commission. And what we dealt with in that, it was an educational process. If you expanded the district, if you shrunk the district, if you closed the district, could you have islands not connected to the district? So the whole thing for me was just an educational process to benefit all. And I don't even know if any of that's pertinent to tonight. Tonight's a budgetary discussion. I'm comfortable with people becoming more learned, but I'll leave it at that. I think we are where we're at.
Okay, well, before we wrap it up and try to sum up what I think I heard everybody say, I'm going to call on Commissioner Smith, and then I'm going to summarize this and suggest a couple of courses of action.
I'm struggling with this. I have, I had major concerns about the budget last year regarding the same issue and the city budget. And quite frankly, I don't think the consultant process that we went through gave us any answers that we really need. So I think that conversation, was going to happen and will happen as what we go forward. But there's a reason we have our goals process in the city before we do the budget. And I feel like we're kind of reversing it here. But I also have a hard time with the line, well, we legally can do it. To me, what the voters told us to do outweighs we can legally do it. And that's the way it has been until the voters give us a thumbs up on a specific project going forward. I'm a no.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I guess a question that I have for Mr. Conkle and Mr. Zook is that will help me come to my summation. I've got some notes here. So what is our statutory obligation? When do we have to have the budget approved or whatever we're going to, when do we have to take an action on this particular urban renewal budget? I know we had statutory requirements for the regular city budget. What is our obligation for this? Is it similar or are we under a different sort of timeline? Whichever one of you wants to take that.
The obligations are identical. It's the same budget process, same area budget law. So at some point, the budget committee has to approve a budget, whatever level that is, and decide what they're going to do with the tax levy. And then that
what's our drop dead date? That's what I'm
June 30, 2020.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So with that information, which is what I thought, so I would agree with a couple of things that I agree with a lot of things everybody said. Here's my dilemma. As was already pointed out, we have some discussion that we are going to have at our meeting on Wednesday, which I think should happen before we deal with the budget. To me, kind of the cart is a little bit before the horse because we've done a study, as Commissioner O'Donnell said, it's been educational. I have been very pleased with the process of how it's been going. I think the information has been very good. It confirmed a lot of stuff that I thought I already knew that I said, oh yeah, but I don't think we've had roaring crowds of people tuning in to watch it because it's not as all that exciting. Unfortunately, it is exciting to me, but then again, I'm kind of a geeky person about that. I think that we did try to have some sessions. I went back and watched a couple of the urban renewal Q&As we had with some of the commissioners. I didn't get to originally sit in on the one for Mr. Neely or Mr. O'Donnell, so I rewatched those. And again, just bringing all that stuff back. So I think that the budget committee is at a disadvantage because number one, you probably haven't read our report. Number two, many of you probably didn't know you were going to be on the Urban Renewal Budget Committee and weren't sitting in on those urban renewal discussions that we had early on the whole year, actually 8-9 months that we've been going through. But I would at this point urge you to look at the memo that's in the packet. If Katie can send that to you, it's the April 19th meeting summary and proposed next steps that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday. So we have a couple of, at least I want to propose a couple of options. We have what I call the Mr. Cross option, which is we can go ahead and make a motion in a second to approve the budget and move on and have the Urban Renewal Commission without our other members take on this discussion about where we're going to go with urban renewal. Another option would be to continue this meeting till after the 19th with that discussion occurring. I'm hoping that on the 19th, we will get to some direction for staff so we know where we're going. And I'm just saying that now to put all of my fellow commissioners on notice that that's part of my expectation for Wednesday, is that we would have a discussion and come to at least maybe not say specifics, but give staff a direction so we can come back and finish that. And then maybe reschedule, that would be option 2, reschedule the budget meeting for, it's gonna be tight, but reschedule it for another day, either at the end of May or early June, so we don't miss our June 30 deadline. So I was trying to take everything we said and kind of give a couple of options. So that is kind of what I see on the table. I'd appreciate any comments from Mr. Conkle or Mr. Zook as to whether that might be possible or whether I'm just completely crazy.
It's up to the commission.
I understand, but I'm asking you your opinion as our fearless leader.
Well, we'll make it happen. We have to have an adopted budget by June 30th.
Okay. Mr. Neatley, I see your hand going up.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve the 2021 budget for $9,701,811.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Either one.
Okay, it's either seconded by Mr. Cross or Rachel Lyle Smith. So 2 seconds. Is there any discussion? Yes, Sean.
This budget is pretty basic. I mean, there's only like 400,000 of the 700 is the staff time, so that we paying that back. 200,000 is to do more work with
Leland.
Yeah,
Leland
Leland.
Consulting.
If we do that, so we won't spend that, and the rest of it is all getting paid for basically out of the rental income. Anything, any project, anything that we go doing in the future literally has to come back to a public hearing and we'll have to do a supplemental budget. And it's not only this has to be done by June 30th. We also have to have our commission one has to have, this is only to approve the budget. Then we have to actually adopt the budget before June 30th. So there are a couple more steps. Well, 2 more, this one and another one. But anyways, that's what, there's not much to this budget. It's really just getting us along till after the Leland discussions. There really isn't much to it.
So I'm sorry. So there was a motion
And a second.
and a second
That's what's happening to your computer.
for me.
Motion and a second. Is any further discussion?
Well, I guess, Matt, the full motion actually includes the maximum amount of tax from the division of taxes shall be levied. Do we just want to take that in 2 separate motions?
Do you have your commission report, Mr. Cross? Because there's a recommendation.
Yeah, can I make a friendly amendment to finish that whole motion?
Yeah, if you want to just say number 7.
Yeah.
Your motion.
Approve the 2021-23 urban renewal biennial budget of $9,701,811 to be forwarded to the Urban Renewal Commission for adoption and establish that the maximum amount of tax from the division of taxes shall be levied for the fiscal years ending 2022 and 2023.
Accepted.
It's a second concur.
I do.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion, I'll ask for the roll. So we have to go through this. We have to have at least 7 people saying yes. Is that correct? Okay.
Commissioner Sean Cross,
Yes.
Emma Lugo,
Yes.
Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
I'm sorry, you froze.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's a
Yes,
yes.
I did get that time.
Yeah.
Timothy
I heard it
Christopher,
too.
No.
Adam Marl,
No.
Doug Neely,
Yes.
Frank O'Donnell,
No.
Kyle Arnhart,
Yes.
Rocky Smith,
No.
Denise McGriff.
Where are we, Ms. Riggs?
We're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4 no's.
Okay, well, I would be a yes. So that's only 6 yeses.
Yep. That's 6 to 4.
Okay, so the motion fails
That's correct.
according to the budget.
That's correct.
Was outlined. So do we want to have a motion to continue this until after the 19th? Where we're going to have a further budget discussion or a discussion about urban renewal. I invite all of you to attend. Or do we want to try to take another vote?
I just have a question for Mr. Zook. I believe we have a placeholder meeting for the budget committee. Is that true? Is that for this Thursday?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm, make sure we were all on the same page.
Yeah, no, we still have that on our calendars. Everybody have that option on our calendars?
Excuse me, for this coming Thursday?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if we're going to be able to do anything from the regular meeting tomorrow that's going to be able to inform us that much about I would prefer to see it set on a date later than that. I mean, we only have an hour meeting tomorrow, and I just don't see that we're.
You mean Wednesday? We're not meeting tomorrow, please. I don't have. that.
Wednesday, excuse me, I meant Wednesday. You got to, I'm sorry, I meant Wednesday. But my point is, we have an hour meeting. I don't think we're going to resolve anything at that point. I don't mind having a motion to have another budget meeting before the 30th of June, but to do it on Thursday, I really don't think, I don't know we're going to change any minds either way at that point. I don't think.
I would tend to agree with you. We didn't schedule out any further than those 2 meetings, did we, Mr. Zook?
No, we have not.
Okay. I know we're already booked on Monday, the 24th, so that is out.
26th is out.
Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, sir. Ma'am, sorry, I'm looking at my.
I'd like to ask the no votes, what would it take to move your vote, or do you have an alternative proposal to move us forward as a body?
I just asked that question and nobody came forth to say, do we have another option or do we need to have another meeting? So I'm looking for some direction from you all as to whether we want to move to schedule another meeting sometime subsequent to the 19th when we have this discussion. Again, we're not probably, as Doug is saying correctly, we're probably not going to get through the entire Leland discussion.
I'm going to move to have a second meeting of the budget committee after I don't know when we're going to schedule another commission meeting. I think we're going to have more than one commission meeting before we're at that point. I'll simply move to have a second budget committee meeting before June 30th, and we can go ahead and work out what the date would be.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I agree with Ms. Lugo. I think it would be valuable for staff to know if there's anything that they can bring back, or if there's stuff that the folks who didn't support the motion what can come back at a future meeting.
I would agree. I already know about what Commissioner, I don't want to try to put words in your mouth, Commissioner Smith, but I know where you're coming from entirely. So, Mr. O'Donnell?
The only thing I would say is I'm not going to change my vote, but I would support the motion to revisit this after the educational process, after that next meeting and before the end of June.
Okay. Tim or Kyle? I mean, you were a yes vote, Kyle. So Tim, you were a no vote. So
Yeah, I fall kind of between the commissioners. I have some serious reservations, both, how we as a commission handle and value the democratic process, and kind of where this is, in this kind of legal limbo. And this is a hard vote for me because I typically support urban renewal. So, but I'm also willing to revisit this maybe like after another meeting and some more information and some kind of further discussion about the topic.
So the question is, what kind of information do you need that would help you?
Well, I'm kind of uncomfortable with the idea of, asking for millions of dollars, but we don't really have a plan for it. Especially in the fact that, I do think that the voters didn't quite understand what they were voting for, but part of that it falls on us not educating and selling urban renewal. So, that's water under the bridge. So it's kind of a moot point now, but
we're trying.
I think we just, I would need to kind of understand what the plan is with this money in the future that we're asking voters and residents to kind of fork up at the moment. Because right now we don't really have a plan. We're just asking for millions of dollars.
Well, we have a plan, but we're not sure if that's the plan that we want to move forward through this education process.
Well, that's kind of what I feel, I understand what you're saying, but
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of specifics I need before I can in good conscience kind of go forward with this.
And Adam, I know this is an unfair question since you've been on the job for such a short time.
Yeah, so for me, it's not any concrete issue apart from the fact that the issues raised tonight have sparked a lot of questions that I would just like to have the time to look at individually. And if I feel as though I need the expertise of staff, I will definitely reach out. But I do think that familiarizing myself with the report, as we've talked about, which I was not a part of, would be a very good first step.
I think I've hit all the no's. Mr. Conkle, since we have a motion and a second, so I will call on you, please.
So I appreciate all the conversation, and it is difficult with the uncertainty with the litigation. I guess just a couple of things. The district does have an approved plan. The work that we're doing with Leland, unless the commission is going to direct staff, I don't think we're not going to have a plan by June 30th that the commission has commented on, vetted, brought forward ideas, debated, and voted on. As much as I'd love to, that's not going to happen. I see Leland will be coming back on Wednesday. You've seen the commission report. We were trying to summarize the discussion from the last Urban Renewal Commission meeting. There was no vote, but we believe that what we heard was that there was a desire to continue urban renewal. There was a desire to look at the project list and right size it and have a debate about what projects should be on there and should not be on there. Update the information in the plan, maybe look at the vision. So, really our next meeting on Wednesday is really going to be confirming whether or not staff heard the correct direction from the commission. And so I guess I don't want there to be this expectation that an urban renewal plan is going to be adopted prior to June 30th, because
God, no.
I don't think it will be. So I think,
Unless you've got one in your back pocket.
and so, yeah, that I think, like I said, I want to make sure that we understand what the expectation is. We're not going to have all the answers on Wednesday, but we will have more information and there'll be more discussion. And maybe there will be questions that folks can bring forward that we can answer to get to a level of comfort moving forward or not. And we find another alternative. I just wanted to clarify that.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I'd really like to get the vote over with. Right.
Call the question.
And a second on the floor, and I see your hand, Rachel. So is pertaining to the vote. So let's have the vote. The motion was to continue our discussion and have another urban renewal budget committee meeting prior to June 30th. Obviously after the 19th, and maybe we will have another meeting after the 19th as well. So
Yeah, so I just want to clarify a couple things. As far as I know, we have to give public notice for these budget meetings and these
Right.
budget hearings. And as far as I know, we have publicly noticed that there would be a meeting tonight, and then we would reconvene if a decision was not made tonight. We would reconvene on Thursday, May 20th at 6 p.m. So as far as I understand, we still have to meet that day, even if we decide to just come in and do a motion to continue to another future date, but we still have to, my understanding is we still have to hold a meeting and find out if there's any public comment or testimony, and then move to the next meeting if that's the case. But just want to make sure that that was very clear to everyone here before we took a vote on this.
Yeah, well, again, you're reading my notes. I don't know how you guys are doing this.
Okay, so I will go ahead and call the roll. Sean Cross.
So does everybody understand that before you call the roll? Okay, so we still have to convene on Thursday, even if it's to continue, and hopefully by then, maybe we will found another date and we can confirm at that time. I know that's a short turnaround, but I think it would behoove us to try to make ourselves available. Okay.
Yeah.
Sean Cross.
Yes.
Emma Lugo.
Yes.
Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Timothy Christopher.
Yes.
Adam Marl.
Yes.
Doug Neely.
Yes.
Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Kyle Arnhart.
Yes.
Rocky Smith.
No.
And Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Do the ayes have it?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we are going to reconvene for at least 10 to 15 minutes on Thursday, May 20th, and that's at the same time at 6 p.m.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, so everybody got that on their calendars. If you please be available. And hopefully by then we will have another date. If there's something that some date you absolutely can't meet, would you make sure you forward that to Katie Riggs? Let her know that's impossible. That would help her greatly. Is there any further communications we have for this evening? I don't see anything else on the agenda other than the word adjournment.
I think you have one hand raised.
One hand. Is that Commissioner Smith?
We have so many meetings. So already we know that the 26th is a conflict with most of us commissioners. The 24th is a conflict. There's probably a few other dates in there already full too. So we're running out of days.
Well, the 25th.
Could I make a suggestion?
Oh, a suggestion is always.
Because we don't have everybody on the commission here to actually say whether they're available on a given date. I'm just going to suggest that Katie Riggs go ahead and contact all of the commissioners, put out a doodle or something.
I said that already, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's already in motion. If there is no other business, I want to let everybody go for the rest of their evening. And thank you for your time and your discussion. It was very valuable. I'm certainly going to be thinking about some of the things that we've talked about, and we will see you for a little bit on Thursday. So without further discussion, this meeting is adjourned.